Ma'am, I'm from Puri.
Oh, Sumitra, you are from Puri.
Yes, ma'am.
Now you are at Puri.
Yes,
Going-
ma'am.
Oh,
Ma'am, my
okay.
native is Puri.
Where are
Hello, ma'am.
you staying now?
Ma'am, my native is Puri. I'm staying here in Puri.
Oh, in which area? I
Yes.
also belong to Puri.
No, ma'am. I'm in proper Puri, near Jagannath Temple.
Okay. I also belong to Puri. I am a native.
Ma'am, from which area?
We near SCS college.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. So we should start now.
Yes, ma'am.
Yesterday we have discussed about various research designs.
Yes.
Um, Today we should discuss about another research design. Now it is correlational research design. Okay. Correlational research design is a non-experimental type of research design. Okay. So it is non-experimental. Non-experimental in the sense that when we conduct a correlational study, we do not control, we do not randomly assign the subjects to experimental group and control group. We do not manipulate the independent variable. What we do, we begin our research with the assumption that everything affects and is affected by all other things. Okay, so variables affect and are affected by other variables. So correlational design is one in which the researcher collects two or more sets of data from the same group of subjects. Okay, so that the relationship between the two sets of data can be determined. So in correlational designs, we have one group of subjects, we have one group of subjects and we have two sets of data. We take measurement for two variables and we find out the relationship between the two. What is correlation? Correlation among variables means the degree of association between the two variables. Okay, whether change in one variable is associated with the change in another variable. Okay, you know about correlation, it can be positive, it can be negative, or there can be no correlation also. Okay, if change in one variable is not associated with the change in other variable, we say both the variables are not correlated. So in correlational research design, we have mainly two objectives. Okay, first, we may be interested to find out the association between two variables. Okay, association, we may be interested to find out the association or relation between or among variables. Okay, it may be between two variables or it may be among more than two variables. Second objective is we may be interested in studies in which we predict the score on one variable using our knowledge about the one or more than one variables. So we, for correlation, we must have at least two sets of variables. Okay, two variables. Sorry, at least we have two variables. Okay, at least we can have two or more than two. So we begin with at least two variables. If our objective is to find out the relationship between two variables, we find out the correlation coefficient if the scores are in interval scale, or if the scores are not in interval scale but in your rank order, ordinal scale, then we can have Spearman's rank order correlation. So for two variable, we can see, we can find out whether variable in one, change in one variable is associated with change in another variable, and correlation always ranges between -1 to +1. We may also be interested to find out the degree of association among more than two variables. When we have more than two variables, we say it multiple correlation. Okay, so multiple correlation is also correlational study. In the second case, we have, when we are interested to predict the score on one variable using our knowledge about the other variable, it is called regression. Okay, it is called regression. So when we are interested in regression analysis, we make prediction. The variable which is predicted is the predictor variable, and on the basis of our knowledge on which variable we predict, the predictor variable are called criterion variables. Okay, so criterion variable, we have knowledge about the criterion variable, and if we know the correlation coefficient, then we can know the we can predict the other variable. We have a regression coefficient, we have regression formula also. Y is equal to ax plus b. And from this formula, applying this formula, we calculate the score on the predictor variable. We predict the predictor variable. Sorry, predictor variable, no, criterion variable. Predictor variable are the variables we have knowledge about it. Okay, predictor variables. From the knowledge of predictor variables, we predict the criterion variable. Okay, I think I was just saying the opposite. No, I am sorry. Criterion variable is the variable which we predict. So we make predictions about the criterion variable, and on the basis of our knowledge on the predictor variable. Okay, so what are the advantages of correlational design? Correlational design is easy, It doesn't require any control, manipulation of independent variable. It doesn't involve repeated administration of behavioral measures. So, pre-test, post-test, carryover effect, all these things do not create problems in correlational design. So, it is correlational design is very easy and simple. But the major disadvantage, major limitation is there in correlational. Major limitation of correlational design is that we cannot establish a cause and effect relationship. Okay, so since we are not controlling the extraneous variables and manipulating the independent variables, and there is no control group, so subjects are not randomly assigned to experimental group and control group, we cannot establish the cause and effect relationship. We simply say that change in one variable, first variable, is associated with a change in the second variable. So both the variables are correlated, but cause and effect relationship we cannot establish. Whether the suppose we have two variables x and y, we cannot ascertain that if x causes y or y causes x. Okay, so we cannot establish the direction of causality. Or there may also be another possibility that a third variable may be causing both x and y. So we cannot establish causation. For example, suppose our we find out that the correlation coefficient between academic achievement and SCS. So SCS and academic achievement both are positively and significantly correlated. We find out high correlation between these two variables. So we here cannot say which is the cause and which is the effect. You may be tempted to say that academic achievement is the cause and SCS is the effect, because those who study more or who are good students, they will find better jobs and their SCS will be better. You may argue that. Okay, that's why you may say that academic achievement is the cause and SCS is the effect. But the other way is also right. We may argue those whose SCS is high, they get better scope to study, they get better opportunities to study. They can study in better colleges, they can take private tuitions, so their academic achievement is high. So we cannot establish or ascertain here the direction of causality. So we cannot say that we cannot say which is the cause and which is the effect. There may be also a third variable which is causing both x and y. This is the main limitation of the correlational design. Another design is there causal comparative research design. Causal comparative research designs are used when we are unable to control the independent variable. We may say that in our ex post facto research, our quasi experimental studies, we cannot control the independent variable, but we compare groups. Okay, so we select the groups on the basis of they are having certain characteristic which we are taking as our independent variable. We select the groups and then compare the groups. This design is known as causal comparative design. So causal comparative design is adopted when we cannot control the independent variable, or it is not possible, or it is unethical to control the independent variable. So the basic design of a causal comparative research study is to select a group that has the independent variable. Okay, we select the group with the characteristic which we think or we take as our independent variable, and then select another group which doesn't have the independent variable. Okay, doesn't have that characteristic. So the group which has the independent variable is the experimental group, and the group without that characteristic, without the independent variable, is called the comparison group. And then the two groups are compared on the dependent variable. In other cases also, we may actually we may not have what is called control or comparison group, but we take the subjects with various levels of independent variables. Okay, various levels of independent variables. Suppose we are interested in finding out the gender differences. Gender is our independent variable, and we have two levels of gender, male and female, and we select the subjects from these different we select the subjects from the groups with different levels of the independent variable. That means we select the subjects, male subjects, and we select the female subjects. So we select subjects from male group and female group. Similarly, we can select subjects from various age groups, 8-year-old, 8-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds, like that. So here we are not manipulating the independent variable. We are selecting the subjects and then comparing them. Causal comparative research attempts to identify a causative relationship between an independent variable and a dependent variable. Okay. So here, causal comparative design, though we may say that the independent variable is the cause and dependent variable is the effect, but we cannot, since we are not manipulating them, we cannot ascertain or we cannot guarantee that causation. So it attempts to determine the cause or consequences of differences that already exist. So we are not manipulating it. Something else may be responsible for the differences in the dependent variable we are observing. Since no control is there and we are not manipulating. That's why causal comparative design are also considered as correlational studies. But there are they are also considered as correlational studies and non-experimental methods. Causal comparative and correlational designs have some similarities. In what way they are similar? Both of them lack manipulation of an independent variable. Okay? And they do not have any experimenter's control. So manipulation of independent variable by the experimenter is not possible in both the types of research. In both the research, usually the independent variable is an attribute of the subject, is a characteristic of the subject. So the independent variables are attribute variables in both the research. They are with the subjects. They are the attributes of the subjects. And they have some differences. What are they? Causal, in correlational research, there is only one group involved. We have one group of subjects. Okay. In causal comparative research, we have two groups of subjects. Okay. So in causal comparative studies, we have two groups of subjects. In correlational research, of course, we can have variables in ordinal scale, but usually we have interval scales or ordinal scales. In causal comparative design, or yes, in causal comparative design, we have at least one variable in categorical scale. Okay. The independent variable is in categorical scale. In causal comparative research design, we may sometimes what we do, we may artificially create two groups, two categories of subjects. How? We may administer an anxiety scale. Okay, an anxiety scale which is in interval scale, but on the basis of the scores of that anxiety scale, we may select the top 25th percentile and the bottom 25th percentile, 25 percentile. So top 25% of students may constitute the high anxiety group, and the bottom 25% of subjects may constitute the low anxiety group. So we have now two groups, high anxiety and low anxiety. Then we can compare them in terms of our dependent variables, say academic achievement. And we may conclude that academic achievement is or academic achievement depends on anxiety. This is an example of causal comparative research. Here we are dealing with the independent variable anxiety. We have two categories of or two levels of anxiety, high anxiety and low anxiety. These are two groups, so these are in categorical scale, but actually we artificially made these categories on the basis of their scores on an interval scale, but we um, artificially created two categories of students. So, causal comparative design. In causal comparative design, at least one independent variable should be in categorical scale or nominal scale. And correlational research looks for correlation among the variables, or it may also make prediction. But in causal comparative research, we look for a difference. We compare between two groups and we look for the difference.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes.
So sorry
Yes.
to interrupt, but
Yes.
you told that the causal comparative study only
Yes.
identifies the positive relationship.
Positive relationships.
Yes, ma'am. You
But
told that it attempts to identify positive relationship between independent and dependent variables.
difference. No relationship. We want to find out the relationship in correlational studies. But in causal comparative studies, we try to find out the difference. Okay. We try to
So,
find
ma'am,
out the, but we cannot say that we cannot establish, we cannot clearly establish the cause and effect relationship in causal comparative design, because the independent variable is not under the control of the experiment, direct control of the experimenter. It is not, the experimenter has not direct control over the independent variable. He cannot manipulate the independent variable. That's why it is also considered as a correlational study. That's why we are comparing it with the correlational study. Both these studies are similar in that they both are non-experimental, and they cannot establish a cause and effect relationship. Correlational design cannot establish a cause and effect relationship, and causal comparative research, though infers about a cause and effect relationship, it is not very clear. We cannot guarantee it whether actually the independent variable has any role in the dependent variable, or some other variable is responsible.
so
Okay.
ma'am, here positive relation or negative relation doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. So
Okay,
the
ma'am.
degree
Thank
of
you.
positive relation or negative relation is not, is immaterial. So actually causal comparative in behavioral sciences, we use causal comparative research more often than true experimental study, because there are a number of organismic variables such as age, gender, intelligence, or personality attributes, etc., which cannot be manipulated by researcher. Okay, so there are also ethical constraints that we cannot cause any physical or mental harm to the participants. So we cannot manipulate every independent variable we are interested to study. Okay, so in most of the researches done in the behavioral sciences, we use causal comparative research design. We do not conduct experimental studies very often. So when we cannot manipulate the independent variable, it causal comparative study is helpful. But the limitation of it is that when we are attributing or we are saying about the cause effect relationship based on causal comparative research, we should be cautious. We cannot guarantee that relationship. We should be cautious about this. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. These are regarding your research designs. Okay. So let us start another paradigm of research. All the designs or research types we have discussed are quantitative research. Okay. We actually have two paradigms of research. Okay. Quantitative research and qualitative research. In quantitative research, we are interested in testing the hypothesis. Okay. In testing the hypothesis. So we start from a general theory. Then we, on the basis of our knowledge in the theory, we formulate a hypothesis, and we try to test this hypothesis. So we here apply deductive logic in quantitative study. From general principles, we are coming to the specific principles. Okay, so but in qualitative research, we follow the inductive method. What we do is we start from data. We observe the data, then we make our inference. Why we go for qualitative study? Because it was felt that most of the while we are conducting quantitative research and we are emphasizing on numbers, we are ignoring many facts, many important facts which cannot be studied quantitatively. Okay, which cannot be studied quantitatively. So these things can only be studied qualitatively. So we go for qualitative study. Qualitative researchers are interested in people's subjective experiences. Okay, how people understand their world, their subjective experiences. Actually, so how do you feel? I cannot study it quantitatively. Your feeling. How can I study it? Um, you can, from your description of your experiences, I can study it. So, qualitative methods are descriptive phenomenological method. Qualitative researchers are important because many things many behaviors behaviors cannot be measured objectively, and there cannot be always universal laws regarding the human behavior. So that's why such type of behaviors which cannot be measured quantitatively or objectively have to be studied qualitatively. So we go for qualitative research. There are several types of qualitative research. Case study, we have discussed it. Case study can be conducted quantitatively and can also be conducted qualitatively. So what is a case study? Case study is a detailed study of the case of an individual or group or event or a society, etc. Ethnography is another qualitative method.
Ma'am, it's related to social psychology, na?
Hmm?
Ethnography is related to social psychology, na?
We are discussing about qualitative research method. Qualitative research method, these are related to research methods. In social psychology, you can also conduct quantitative study as well as qualitative study. So qualitative studies are not only specific to social psychology. What did your Freud did? He conducted qualitative study. Your Piaget's theory is based on qualitative study. It is a development. It is his theory on cognitive development. So it is in developmental psychology. So it is not specific to any branch of psychology. We have a different paradigm of research. Okay.
Oh,
So
okay,
in
ma'am.
social psychology, also we can conduct quantitative study. 1 minute. So another qualitative study type of qualitative study is ethnography. Ethnography actually focuses on a particular community or cultural group. In ethnography, we study socio-cultural phenomena. We make comparative analysis of different cultural groups. This is ethnographic study. We have historical methods. We go through historical literature and find out, try to explain historical events and analyze the cause and effect relationship, trends of events, etc. We have grounded theory, another type of qualitative research. Grounded theory is the is a method in which the researcher tries to collect the data, analyze it, and formulate some theory, to build some theory on the basis of his observation. He develops theories. That is grounded theory. Why it is called grounded theory? Because here the theory is based, grounded, or rooted in data, in observation. And we have phenomenology, another type of qualitative research method. Another method of qualitative research, phenomenology. In phenomenology, conscious experiences of subjects are studied. In phenomenology, we do not use any theory or assumption. How do the subjects experience a phenomenon? For example, what is it like to be in love? Okay, so here no theory or assumption are not taken care, are not considered. But we are interested in the subject's experiences of being in love. So there are some differences between the quantitative research and qualitative research. If we consider the general framework of the research, quantitative or objective of research, quantitative research is interested in testing the hypothesis. Okay, so quantitative research seeks to confirm hypotheses using highly structured methods. Qualitative research seeks to explore the phenomena, seeks to describe a phenomena, describe an event using some methods which are not so structured. Okay, so qualitative research is not very structured. Here in quantitative research, we try to quantify the variation. We take two groups and we try to measure the differences between the groups. Okay, so we try to put the in number, try to describe the differences between the groups in terms of numbers. Okay, so in quantitative research, we also predict causal relationship. We try to predict relationships. In qualitative research, we describe variation. We do not quantify variation. We explain a relationship. We do not. We explain a relationship. We do not predict it. We describe relationship. We describe behavior. We describe the differences between people. But in which type of research? In qualitative research, we are interested in the description of behavior, in the description of relationships. But in quantitative research, we are interested in quantifying the or in measuring the differences, in predicting the relationships. In quantitative research, we use questionnaires that are close-ended. Structured interview and psychological tests. So for conducting a quantitative research, we use instruments like standardized tests, close-ended questionnaires, and psychometric questionnaires and structured interviews. Okay. And sometimes also we use non-participant observation. But in qualitative research, our instruments are our participant observation, semi-structured or unstructured interview schedules. We also sometimes conduct focus group discussions, small group discussions to elicit data from people. And we also analyze the written documents. Okay. So diaries, narratives of people. These are the instruments. And in quantitative research, the data is represented in forms of numbers and graphs. So what constitute data in quantitative research? Numbers and graphs. Okay. But in qualitative research, the data is represented in the form of notes, recordings, videotapes. So what constitute data in qualitative research? Words, written documents, and our video tapes or audio tapes. These constitute the data in qualitative research. In quantitative research, the research design is predetermined. Okay, so in quantitative research, we first decide the research design. Then we follow the design. So it is fixed. It is stable research design. And it is the same for all participants. We follow the same principle or same method. But in qualitative studies, research designs are flexible. We can change the design according to the situational demands. Okay. So, in quantitative research, internal validity as well as external validity is high. We talk of internal validity and external validity. But in qualitative research, since we are interested to study a particular group and the methods are flexible, these are internal and internal validity is less. But qualitative studies have high ecological validity. Ecological validity means whether is suitable, the interpretations are suitable to the particular situation. It is having high ecological validity. Okay. So these are some of the differences between quantitative research and qualitative research. So let us discuss about ethnography. Ethnography is a method in which we are interested to study socio-cultural phenomena. of a community. Okay, we make comparisons among cultural groups. It is also known as, the method is also known as ethnomethodology. Ethno means people. Ethnomethodology. So the meaning is methodology of people. Here we actually what do you do? We select a culture. Suppose we contact some people of that culture, collect some information from them. Those subjects, they provide us some more respondents of their community, so they can take us to other subjects. This is known as chaining process. Suppose I contact you, I collect some information from you, you then you then make me familiar with your friends, and I may collect information from them. Your friends may again take me to their friends, and I may collect from their friends. So this is known as chaining. Thus, the data is collected using a chain sampling in ethnographic research. The samples are interviewed and re-interviewed to get deeper responses. Actually, the ethnographer stays within the community and records data, observes their cultural events, interviews the people of that culture, conducts focus group discussion, and all these interview transcripts and observation field notes are the data. So in ethnology or ethnography, in ethnographic research, the objective of this research depends upon and is also affected by the interpretation of our understanding of the culture. To what extent we understand the cultural phenomena. It is also very important to identify the target community. Nature and size of the community has to be decided. And it is also assumed that the researcher is an expert or is familiar with the norms, the cultural mores, languages of the community. So the researcher has to understand the culture and has to learn the language and tradition, cultural practices of the community. Okay, so ethnographic research can be of several types: macroethnography or microethnography. Macroethnography, when the cultural groupings are broadly defined, large groups such as the Indians, Pakistanis, and their common perspectives are studied at a more larger level, it is called macro ethnography. So the cultural group is broad is large and broadly defined. Microethnography is more specific cultural grouping. Suppose we are trying to study our a particular school. Yes, we can also conduct ethnographic research in schools, because in the each school has also a culture of its own. So if we try to study practices prevailing in the school, it is ethnographical research. Or a smaller group, a particular tribe. This is microethnography. Okay, so we may be interested to study a particular tribe in Fulbani. It is microethnography. Okay, ethnographic research can be conducted with a emic perspective or a ethic perspective. Emic perspective. What is emic perspective? Emic means EMIC. Emic means in this approach, the viewpoints and responses of the in-group or members of the culture under study are noted down. So, we study the culture from the insider's perspective. Okay, emic perspective. Ethic perspective, ETIC. Ethic perspective is the viewpoint of the outsiders, out-group members are studied. Outsiders means the persons who do not belong to the culture. So it is the outsiders view. How to conduct an ethnographic method study? There are several steps. First, selection of the culture. It is the culture has to be identified or selected in which you are interested to conduct your study. Then review, a second step is review of literature. You must have a brief idea or historic sketch of the culture you are going to study. In order, you should know the culture you are going to study. So you should collect a brief historical sketch. Then you should in the third stage, you should get an entry to the culture. So the ethnographer tries to enter the culture or to gain the acceptance of the members of the culture. You are an outsider. Why should the members of the particular culture would accept you? They may not disclose their feelings. They may not give the information you want to get or want to obtain. They may not give to you because you are an outsider. They may not trust you. So you have to gain their trust. You have to you have to gain their confidence. You have to gain their acceptance. For this, you have to live there in their community. Okay, so what the ethnographer or ethnographic researcher does, he stays with the community, okay, for months or years. He adopts their way of life, their style of living. He adopts their way of life. He learns their language. So it is known as to go with the culture, to work with the culture, to talk with the culture. Then you collect your data. How can you collect your data? You
Ma'am, I had a question.
yes,
Ma'am,
yes,
ethnographic research is basically related with sociology, social psychology, and anthropology.
yes,
Uh, so my basic question is, while conducting an ethnographic research, we have to go for a culture. But I mean, we can investigate our research on a culture or a particular tribe or something like that. But
yes.
can we conduct our research on clinical setting?
Yes, you can study many psychological phenomena. Like suppose I assume you are aware of the black magic or witchcraft practiced in many tribes in Keonjhar and Mayurbhanj.
Yes, ma'am.
You can go and study this phenomenon there. So their blind belief or superstitious belief, we can study it. Ethnographic research, you can conduct it.
Yes, ma'am.
You can study a particular psychological phenomenon there in a tribe. So psychology people can also do ethnographic research. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
So how to collect data in an ethnographic method? So you may collect data through unstructured and semi-structured interview, participant observation, and you may conduct focus group discussion. So your data, you collect data through focus group discussion, interview, and observation. So your data will be in the form of observation transcripts, interview or observation video recordings, interview recordings or transcripts, and focus group discussion transcripts. Then, after data collection, you analyze and interpret it and formulate your you make your conclusion and formulate your theory. Okay. Then another research method is grounded qualitative method is grounded theory. Grounded theory refers to the process of generation of theory which is based on collection of data from multiple sources. Okay, and your theory is rooted in the data. In while you are um, um, doing a grounded theory research, you can use also quantitative data as and when required, because data is collected from multiple sources. So you can also use quantitative data if necessary. Usually, data is collected in the form of field notes and video recordings. Then the data is categorized into different variables, and the researcher then tries to find out the relationship among these variables. Grounded theory method was developed by Glasser and Strauss in 1969. It is a relatively new method. recent method. It provides a direction to the researcher and directs them to generate new theories or modify the existing ones on the basis of the data. Okay, grounded theory emphasizes on the process by which the theory is evaluated. It emphasizes on enhancing the theoretical sensitivity. Theoretical sensitivity means your ability to analyze and interpret the variable. You must be sensitive to the variables operating, and you have the ability to analyze and interpret them. So grounded theory requires the researcher to develop theoretical sensitivity. Okay. The theorist generate concepts which explain people's actions, and he develops theories. So grounded theory is not a reporting of facts, okay, but it explains a set of relationship between the concepts and makes a set of probabilistic statement, because it makes theoretical explanation. Grounded theory has two interrelated meanings. That means grounded theory is a theory. It has two meanings. It is a theory, first, that is well grounded, or the theory is developed from a close inspection of the qualitative data. So grounded theory has two meanings. First, it is a theory which is based on qualitative data, which is generated from qualitative data. And second meaning of grounded theory, it is a method of analysis. It is also a method of analysis. Actually, in qualitative research, many research, you may think it as a research method, but it may be a method of analysis, like this. So they are both research methods as well as methods of analyzing the data. So in grounded theory, the data can include transcripts from interview, both one-to-one interview and focus group discussion. Focus group discussion, you know it, a small group discussion. Researchers note, observational field notes, documentary sources, that is your historical records, archives, archival data, and information printed in media. Secondary secondary data like your TV program, political speeches, etc. Secondary interpretation of your data. Then these are like several types of several sources of data. So grounded theory depends on multiple sources of data. There are steps to develop grounded theory. So what the researcher does when he collects the data, tries to analyze it. So he does memoing. Memoing means memo, short notes. In offices, when files go, officers attach or clerks attach short notes on the file, the summary file on a short note. That is called memo. So, memoing means short notes. Memos means short notes. So, memoing means making short notes. So, the researcher collects data in the form of memos. Suppose he observes something, he makes short notes. Writes short notes. Again, which are used later on. When these memos are used in later analysis. So memos can be prepared in 3 ways. First, theoretical notes. Theoretical notes contains theoretical notes are prepared on the basis of textual database. Okay. These are relatively long notes. Relatively, these are their length is relatively more. Second type of memo is field notes. Field notes are prepared when the researcher actively participates in the study. When he interacts with the subjects or makes observation of the events or subjects' behavior, the researcher notes his or her observation in form of memos, field notes. Then third type of notes or memos are code notes. When he is observing the events or observing some behavior or events, he or she is labeling the events, categorizing the things or properties or events which he or she is observing. This is known as codes. So codes are labels or names. So these code notes are used also as a source of information for formation of final reports. So when he is categorizing the events, it is code notes. After memoing, the researcher goes to the second step, that is the sorting, S-O-R-T-I-N-G. Once the memos are prepared, the collected information or data are sorted in order to organize them in proper order. Okay, so the relevant memos are organized in proper order so that the researcher can find out the relationship, create categories and find out the relationship. So he sorts or arranges the memos in particular order. Then the third step is writing. After memos are sorted, the researcher puts the collected information into words, thus interprets the memos, organized memos, and tries to find out the meaning of the relevant data. So, how does the researcher interpret the memos or data, the researcher interprets it in the light of his or her own perspective, own past experience, and the existing literature. So he uses his own subjective perspective as well as his knowledge in the literature, existing literature also influences the interpretation. Okay. So, what
Yes.
are you saying something?
No, ma'am.
Hmm? Are you
No,
saying?
ma'am.
Okay, thank you. What is the use of grounded theories? Grounded theory is often used in the formulation of policies and program evaluation research. It is also used in marketing research to analyze the consumer's demands and preferences. Okay, so in marketing research also grounded theory is used. Um, what are the criticism? In interpretation, while interpreting the information, the researcher interprets the data in the light of his own subjective own perspective. So the researcher's preconception or bias influences the analysis of the data. Okay, so this very thing, due to this researcher's perspective, the validity of the grounded theory research is questionable. Okay, then come to discourse analysis. Discourse analysis and content analysis. Discourse analysis can also be considered as a type of research, qualitative research, as well as a method of data collection, data analysis. Okay. So discourse analysis, content analysis, this can also be considered as data analysis technique as well as a research technique. So content analysis as well as discourse analysis as a research technique can be considered as a research technique for the objective, systematic and quantitative description of manifest content of communications. Okay, communication can be oral as well as there can be written communication. Okay, so discourse analysis is um, usually, not always, it also can be written communication, analyzes the oral communication. So it makes an analysis of speech units. Okay, so speech units. Discourses can be defined as sets of linguistic material. Okay, sets of linguistic material that have a degree of coherence in their content and organization. Okay, so they are linguistic materials. When we communicate with somebody, they are called discourses. So, this discourses means interpreting the speech, we can say. So, there are several assumptions of discourse analysis. Okay. First assumption, human behavior cannot be studied objectively. The researcher's subjectivity is going to influence the interpretation. So, the researcher always has some expectation, belief, or he has a set of cultural values when conducting the research. And these personal beliefs and expectations and his values are going to influence the research. So, his observation of behavior. So, human behavior cannot be studied objectively. The second assumption is that psychological constructs like your personality, intelligence, or your thinking, all these are psychological constructs. So, psychological constructs are real and naturally occurring events or categories. They are naturally occurring events. They are shaped by language. Okay? They are shaped by language. How language is socially or culturally constructed? We learn our language from our society. So, psychological constructs are also socially constructed. Okay? Because they always socially constructed. And the third assumption is that people are the result of social interaction. Suppose we are going to study psychological constructs like our motivation, say, or intelligence. It is assumed that we cannot study the psychological phenomenon unless the person interacts with each other, unless the people are interacting with each other, we cannot study their psychological constructs. Okay, so people are the result of social interaction. Okay, people are the result of social interaction. So, social interaction is very important. And so, how can we study the social interaction? It is through their language. Okay, so There are some steps in discourse analysis. First, target orientation. The focus of the study has to be identified. Then, significance of data. In the second step, the relevant information is collected. The relevance of the data depends on the researcher's judgment. So, from the very beginning, the assumption is made that no research can be, no behavior can be observed objectively. So, which data or which part of your discourse is relevant, that is to be judged by the researcher. Okay. Then interpretation of the data. The researcher analyzes and tries to understand, then analyze or interpret the data. So he tries to understand what is going on. What is the psychological world of the person? Then he interprets the finding, makes the report of the finding, summarizes the data collected. On the basis of analysis of information, the findings are summarized and concluded. Okay. What are the limitations? There are some limitations of the discourse analysis method. Discourse analysis, the limitations are, since the method lacks a proper format or guideline, the processing of data through this approach, the analysis of data through this approach is controversial. There is no such guideline how to make a discourse analysis. Interpretation lacks objectivity, because I have already told you the which part of the data is important or is relevant, that depends on the judgment of the researcher. So interpretation lacks objectivity. Reliability and validity of this method are questionable, because if you analyze, you make a discourse analysis and I make a discourse analysis, they may not be same. The findings may not be same. And content analysis tries to analyze written words. So it is the systematic description of a phenomenon. It starts with the selecting the content of analysis. Then the researcher tries to categorize and code the description. Then makes the interpretation. An example of a conclusion based on content analysis is 20% of newspaper editorials in 2016, December 2016, mentioned about at least one aspect of demonetization. Okay, so here the researcher went for a content analysis of the editorials of the newspapers in the month of December 2016. So in December 2016, the editorials of the newspapers are undertaken content analysis. So the researcher analyzed the content of the editorial of the newspapers and found that 20% of the newspaper categorized the editorials, content of the editorials, and then found that 20% of the editorials contain only at least one aspect of demonetization. Okay. So from the contents, the researcher categorized the different aspects of demonetization and how frequently they are mentioned. Then like this, the researcher made such a conclusion. Okay. Do you
Yes,
have any
ma'am.
doubt?
No, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Can you just explain the first two step of discourse analysis?
First, two steps.
First and second. Yes, ma'am.
First, we have to focus the actual our target. We have to orient to the target. We have to decide our focus of research. Okay. So what part we are going to focus? As I told you in content analysis, we were looking for the aspects of demonetization. Okay.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
first we have to focus our we have to decide the focus of our study. Then we have to collect the data. Okay. Then we have to interpret the data. Discourse analysis, we are analyzing the findings and then making a summary. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
So first
Thank you, ma'am.
we have to decide our research focus. Then second stage is data collection. Okay.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. I got you.
Um, then examining the quality of qualitative research. It is important. When we are talking about a research, how can we decide the quality of a good research? Any idea? We have discussed. First, the research finding must be replicable. Okay. If we have conducted the research following the methods correctly, then same finding would be found if would be obtained if we are going to repeat the experiment or research. Okay. So the research, the quality of a good research is that the findings are reliable. Okay. The findings must be consistent, isn't it?
Yes,
The
ma'am.
findings must be valid. Valid in terms of, there are two types of validity: internal validity and external validity. Okay. And the research must be objective. So quantitative research has the quality of a quantitative research. The quality of a quantitative research is just in terms of its objectivity. Objectivity means there is no subjective bias. Observations are objective, interpretations are objective. Okay. So the research must be objective. The research must be reliable. So reliability is another requirement for deciding the quality. Then internal validity and external validity. Okay. So while talking discussing objectivity in qualitative research, there is lack of objectivity. Okay. So the interpretations depend on the judgment of, or the depends on the researcher's judgment. So it lacks objectivity. However, if the researcher can acknowledge the influence of subjective factors on the findings, then the findings, it is said that the findings do not need to be objective. Okay. If I conduct a qualitative research and while interpreting the findings, I acknowledge that these subjective factors might have influenced my interpretation. So I am not claiming for objectivity. Okay. I am well aware of the fact that my subjective biases might have influenced my interpretation. Okay. So researchers or authors of qualitative research, authors in qualitative research, they uh, opine that if the researcher is well aware of the fact that subjective factors might have influenced the findings and they acknowledge it, then there is no need. The research doesn't need to be objective. So Lincoln and Guba, instead, they suggest it requires conformability. Instead of objectivity, Lincoln and Guba, they suggest that the researcher must mention how much neutrality can be there in the interpretation of the data. That means I am aware that to this extent my subjective biases might have influenced my interpretation. So beyond that, it is neutral. Okay. So the extent to which my interpretation is neutral must be mentioned by the researcher, and that is known as conformability. Okay. we can know about the conformability of the data if the same event is observed by, or the same observation is interpreted, same data is interpreted by several researchers. Okay, several researchers or several judges interpret the same data, then we can know the extent to which the data is neutral. Okay, my subjective bias is not same as yours. So if both of us separately interpret the same data, then the extent of neutrality can be known, and this is known as conformability, the extent to which the data interpretation is neutral. Okay, so instead of objectivity, which is used in quantitative research, is a requirement in quantitative research, in qualitative research we talk about conformability. Okay, then come to reliability. So in qualitative research, the question of replicability is meaningless, because we are interested in specific cases, in specific situations, which may not be replicated in future research. Okay, so we should not use the term reliability for replicability of research findings. However, here we need to be assured of dependability of the findings. Okay, what is dependability? Dependability means whether such results will endure over time or not, and if not, why not? So the researcher makes a statement about whether the results will endure over time. If it will not, then why? Why it will not endure? So this makes the research findings dependable. Okay. So instead of reliability, we use the concept of dependability in qualitative research. Two other qualities of good quantitative research are internal validity and external validity. The term validity in qualitative research is confusing, because qualitative research is concerned with description and explanation. Okay, so in quantitative research, what is the meaning of internal validity? What is the meaning of internal validity? Internal validity is the extent to which we can assure that, or ensure, we can ascertain that the change in the dependent variable is caused by the change in independent variable, or the extent to which the dependent, we can say the dependent variable is the cause of independent variable, or the independent variable is the only cause of dependent variable. So the extent to which the degree of certainty, it is the degree of certainty to of claiming that the independent variable has caused the change in dependent variable. So we are here not manipulating independent variable, not finding out the dependent variable. We are just describing the phenomena and explaining it. So the question of internal validity is the internal validity, the question of internal validity doesn't arise here. However, it is important whether or not our explanation fits the description. Whatever we are describing the data, we are describing the phenomenon, and then we are explaining it. So if our explanation fits the description or not. So in qualitative research, instead of internal validity, we are using the term credibility. Okay. We use the term credibility, whether the findings fit our data. Because our interpretations, our explanations may be different from others' explanations. Okay. Our explanation may be different from the explanation of others. So there are multiple realities. What I feel, what I explain is my reality. What you feel, what you experience is your reality. So there can be multiple realities. So how can we say that our explanation fits our or suits our data, suits the data? It is correct. How can we say? So we can test the credibility by triangulating the data. Okay, it is known as data triangulation. So credibility of qualitative research, credibility is used instead of internal validity. Credibility is can be tested by data triangulation. Triangulation means gathering the same data in different ways. Okay. Suppose I am interested in studying a particular phenomenon. Okay. Suppose I am studying the classroom behavior of students in or cheating behavior of students during exam. I am going for a qualitative study. So I am collecting the data. I may collect the data through interview. I may collect the data through observation. Okay. I may conduct focus group discussion. Groups of students discuss among themselves, and they are discussing whether they are cheating and how they are cheating. Okay. I can also collect the data through your through your poems, your writings, your letters, your written documents. Okay. Suppose you may write a letter to your friend, so and so, we cheated in the exam, in today's exam. So this is a written document. So by all these means, I can collect data. Okay. So there are different sources of data. If I collect data from several sources, I test it by various analytical methods. Various persons observe. Suppose we go for observation method. There are more than one observers. If their observations, their interpretations are similar, then we can say that our explanation are correct. Okay. So this is the data triangulation, collecting the same data by different methods, by different people. So by different methods, by different investigators, we can collect the same data and then we compare it. That is data triangulation. So by data triangulation, we can estimate the credibility of our qualitative research. Credibility is used instead of internal validity. Then comes the question of external validity. External validity is known for, is necessary for generalizability of our research findings. So, where questions of meaning and interpretation in individual cases are the focus. So in qualitative case studies, our focus is on individual cases, in specific cases. So generalizability is not a very essential requirement for qualitative research. When we are studying the specific cases, how can we generalize it? So, generalizability is not a very essential requirement. However, because we study, suppose in case study, we study unique cases. But if we cannot generalize the findings to other parts of the population, then why should we conduct a research if it is not helpful? But can we at least transfer the finding to another situation or another form of data gathering with the same people? Suppose I am observing you. Okay, I am interested in your behavior and I am observing your behavior. Okay, I cannot generalize your behavior to others in your class. However, can I transfer the findings of my observation to other situations? Now you are behaving aggressively. So in other situations also, it is possible that you will behave aggressively. That statement I can do. Okay. I cannot say that Sumitra is behaving aggressively, so Nikki will also behave aggressively. I cannot say that because we are dealing with unique cases. Sumitra is unique and Nikki is also unique. But I can say that Sumitra is behaving aggressively in the classroom. So most probably she will also behave aggressively in her home. Okay, I can make such statements. Okay, or through my observation, I infer that or I conclude that Sumitra is aggressive. If I can administer a test of aggression to Sumitra, and from that test, her scores also shows that she is high on aggression, then we can say that she is aggressive. Okay, so we can say that if my behavior says that she is aggressive, if I administer a test of aggression, she will also score high. So my finding can also hold good in situations like that. In these situations, my observation, what I have observed, is also will also be same if I administer a test to Sumitra. Okay, understood?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am, we understood.
So this is known as transferability. This is known as transferability. So instead of external validity, in qualitative research, we um, talk of transferability. Okay, so in quantitative research, the quality of a research is determined in terms of objectivity, reliability, internal validity, and external validity. Okay. In qualitative research, the quality is determined in terms of in terms of dependability.
Ma'am,
Yes.
ma'am,
Yes. Are you saying something?
conformability. Yes, ma'am. Conformability, dependability, credibility, and transformity.
Very good. So these four are the parallel qualities to determine used to determine quality of a qualitative research. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any doubt?
No, ma'am, I don't have any doubt.
No, ma'am.
Then okay, good. So I think we should stop now.
Okay, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you,
Yes,
ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
welcome. It is a nice experience. Teaching you is a nice experience.
Ma'am, it's our pleasure.
Hmm? Are you saying?
Ma'am, it's our pleasure. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
Have a good day, ma'am.
Okay.
Days
You
of.
too. Good evening.
Yes, ma'am. A very good evening.
Good evening, ma'am. Ma'am, will you take a class tomorrow as well?
Yes, are you saying something?
Ma'am, I'm asking, will you take a class tomorrow also?
I don't have any class tomorrow.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Welcome.